one of the servicemen who was assigned to Rendlesham here in England in the 1980s, Jim Penniston, he wrote a book all about his experience when he saw the craft and he touched the skin of the craft. He suggests that the pyramids themselves are longitude and latitude and central to energy around the Earth, and he believed that the object that came was from the future. But we've got to look at all aspects. An ancient technology, or whatever's being downloaded, because he was downloaded with a load of binary numbers, and of course years later he got them analyzed, and they brought forth this message. One, we're not alone, and two, that there are people from the future, and that the pyramids seem to be central to a time where everything is coming together. So literally the pyramid seem to be the central point for all of this distribution of energy, and how important that they are as a powerhouse for this energy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Philip Kinsella on the show today. Philip's a medium, author, and researcher on NDEs and UFOs. I'm eager to hear his thoughts about what's going on with the drones in New Jersey, his research, and whether spiritual and UFO connections can affect humans. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now let's go talk with Philip. Philip, I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. You're staying up late for us.
Yes, Julie, thank you very much indeed. I'm honored to be on your show. And yeah, it's a little late, but not too late. We haven't struck midnight yet.
Oh, good. Because you're in the UK and I'm in Sweet Home, Alabama, of course. So you're about, I think, 6 hours behind me because I'm in Central Time
Yes, I think we're 5 hours, I think,
from the
because
East
we
Coast.
had the clocks moving. Yeah, that's right. Ah, right, then you are, yes.
Yeah, so I'm in the other.
Wonderful.
Yeah. What's a UFO? Are they real?
Well, that is a big question, Julie, and something we've been looking at for many long years. Well, at least myself anyway, for at least 35 years, I'd say. We don't know what they are, but yes, they are real. But I do believe it's possible that the main emphasis of the UFO, now strangely changed to unidentified aerial phenomena, I think the whole aspect of ufology as a whole has changed, it's morphed. And I think now we're looking at it in a more scientific way rather than the nuts and bolts aspects that we had looked at it many long years ago. We still are no nearer in understanding or establishing what we're dealing with, but the phenomena is a reality. I can assure you of that. Definitely.
I live in Alabama. I live in Birmingham. I live about 2 hours south of Huntsville, where NASA is based, where the Marshall Flight Center was. They have an amazing museum there of all these rockets and the rocket scientists that a lot of them worked on the Apollo project or are in the museum, and you can talk with them. And I'm a huge fan of Werner von Braun, who was the rocket scientist, and his guys that came to America after World War II, the German rocket scientists. And the story goes that in the 50s and 60s, when the little men in the flying saucers, were popular, and it was just a bubble on an aircraft or some kind of a spacecraft that was happening. The story goes that they brought in von Braun and they said, is this an unidentified flying object? Is this from a different planet or a different solar system? And he laughed and he said, no. He said, my colleagues who were rocket scientists with me in Germany who went to Russia, one of them had this plan. He came up with it when we were all still in Germany. And I've seen the blueprints of it. And that's his plan. It's a surveillance craft that the Russians are using. And so I always think of that and think of him with the UFOs, how they were depicted when I was a kid with just the bubble and the flying saucer thing. Are they the same? Could it be some kind of observation craft? Do you believe that it's from a different galaxy far, far away or a different solar system? Or what do you think is going on with them?
Well, the nature of the UFO is very interesting because it seems to be a composite of two parts, one physical, one non-physical. And if we look at the human ourselves, we don't know much about what we are, where we come from, our true origins, other than the Sunday school version and the cold clinical approach, which is the chaos theory. And I think that with ourselves as humans, we go through a process of transmutation of thought. Now, what's interesting is that the UFO phenomena presented itself to begin with as rather like a nuts and bolts aspect, and now has morphed into a more complex phenomena, which seems to integrate with, some kind of teleportation, what I call soul extraction. I mean, hell, the whole thing is so wide and diverse now, it can't be contained within one small unit as it had back in the day. So, as we progress as a species, so does the phenomena, apparently. So, are we connected? Is there an interlinking of that? And by the way, it wouldn't surprise me of whether or not there is this kind of like breakaway civilization. That means to say that there are some scientists or a group of people who have access to technology that's way beyond our means, and I don't dispute that at all. And that all maybe goes back to Roswell, even further back than that. And there's an interesting part that we need to explore with regards to that in terms of our understanding of the UFOs and what this phenomena may represent in terms of its reality.
For those who don't know, what's Roswell?
Roswell was the crashing of a so-called flying saucer in 1947 in the region of Roswell, and the debris of which was discovered by a rancher, Mac Brazel, who raised sheep, and he found all this debris on his grounds, and he kind of like felt that this material was strange because it wouldn't bend, it didn't burn, so he took most of it to one of the sheriff's office in town, Sheriff Wilcox, and of course, then he informed the Roswell Army, and then they got involved. And the next thing we knew is that there was a story out saying that the army were in possession of a flying disc, and then they retracted by putting out another statement saying that it was a mogul weather balloon. My argument to that is this: that the army are, we have to be in praise of our armed forces. They are amazing people, men and women. Back in that day, you're not telling me that the army didn't know anything about this secret, mogul weather balloon. So secret, in fact, that the army didn't even know it had crashed. So I think at that point there was a cover story, and I think in Phil we go further with that with regards to Colonel Philip Corso and many others who then became involved in Majestic 12, a secret elite government scientific unit to establish this extraterrestrial phenomena. But as we understand it, whatever crashed there, I do believe, although it's under debate, that it was something not of this world, but it left something. And my brother had written something about this some years ago, that the technology of which was just in reach of what we could almost replicate. Now, that's very strange because this phenomenon, whatever it is, whatever it represents, is able to perhaps duplicate or bring forth something that's trying to direct us into a technological age. So that is Roswell in a nutshell. And then, of course, the whole story was buried, and it was Stanton Friedman, the late wonderful Stanton Friedman. I'd met him once in the United States of America, your great country in Phoenix. And he brought this all out many years later. So it is a controversial subject, the Roswell case, but one that is the glory of the whole of ufology, one of the most famous cases in the entire world.
Ufology? Is that what you're saying? That's a new vocabulary word for me, Philip. Is that what UFO science is called?
Yeah, it's practically known as ufology or a ufologist. There's always an ist behind a name. It doesn't make us scientists, although there is no real department that you can take a degree within. Although if there was, you bet your bottom dollar I'll be there doing it.
You
But
could teach it. You could do the whole department.
but this also leads you into theoretical content, which is very important. We have a lot of UFOs now, UAPs being sighted around the world. They seem to evade detection in most cases. In a lot of cases, they're hard to catch. They defy our science. They defy even our sense of logic. So this is where the arguments rage. You've got many of those within the UFO fraternity who look at the UFO department as all love and light, and we're not dismissing that as totally evil. We're not dismissing that either. Of a breakaway society, another one, perhaps attributed to some kind of antediluvian culture from ages past, or us from the future. Or are we looking at remote viewers coming from interdimensional means through to our world? Or are we dealing with a phenomena that is itself operating on higher levels of vibration? That means to say that they are beyond our space time and can come in and go out very quickly. So it's all very fascinating. And you get those who have all the answers. And I always say, well, good luck to you, because I can tell you right now, I don't have a clue. But what we do have is a bunch of theories, models that we can put together. And that's what I've been working on for many long years. And it does seem to branch out into other areas of strange phenomena. So it doesn't just encapsulate the UFO phenomena or the alien hypothesis, but also getting into cases of Sasquatch, of Dogman, because there seems to be patterns with these beings wherever they are. I mean, Julie, if you know where they're hanging out, can you get them to go down to a bar and we can always have a drink and talk about all the issues and problems?
Well, that's why I'm so excited to meet you and get to talk to you because I can help you with this stuff because we can communicate with them telepathically because
Yeah.
I've done it. And couple of things. First of all, I have a friend who's a retired Air Force colonel, and I asked him about Area 51. And this guy was a big dog at the Pentagon. He designed the Desert Storm air campaign with all of that and ran a bunch of just brilliant guys who came up with the whole strategy. And then he parlayed that into business. And I took his class and have used some of those strategies to sell my last company that were implemented for the Desert Storm campaign. He's retired Colonel John Warden. Anyways, I asked him one time and I said, "Okay, tell me about Area 51." And he was a fighter pilot. And he said, "Oh, well, I don't know anything except we're told if we go near it, they'll just shoot us down." And I said, "Get out of here." And he said, "No, seriously." At Area 51, explain what Area 51 is to everybody, please.
Yeah, Area 51 is well, actually, it's a military site, and there's a lot of history with regards to Area 51. Of course, there are separate areas that connect the entire complex together. And you're right in stating that any aircraft that comes over it is not allowed within its airspace. And of course, there's a lot of controversy which states that Area 51 in Nevada, by the way, is home to extraterrestrial UFO technology. And a lot of this came out through whistleblower. One of the whistleblowers within ufology who was involved with secreting a lot of this information. Apparently, Bob Lazar was the one who let the worm out, the can out of the worms, or basically whatever, whichever way you see it. So there's been a lot of controversy because they think that a lot of the Roswell wreckage was taken there. But allegedly, the Roswell material was sent to Wright-Patterson's Air Force Base. And of course, that accrued to the bigger connection of Area 51. So there's been a lot of controversy. And I know that they have a lot of people that go out and skywatch in areas. There are also hidden cameras. So if you go over a certain, you know, part, then they'll bring out these trucks, these black trucks, and of course, men will then, of course, come forward and tell the people they're not allowed to be there. So this also warrants the controversy and the secrecy of the site. So naturally, people, will assume that this area is home to it. But it's possible that that a lot of the reversed engineered technology, as we call it, has been kind of experimented on within Roswell, within their scientific core, not just within the military faction. And we have to have respect for that. I mean, if we had our bases open to everyone, I mean, there would be nothing there because it would be overrun by people who would tear the place apart. So, in terms of technology, of the weapons division, and also with other exotic materials, whether or not they be alien or whichever way you'd like to call it, certainly there's a lot of controversy there. And of course, the thing is, Julie, the really horrible thing is whatever we get within, certain people telling us things, well, Area 51 is home to UFO technology and dead aliens on cryogenic freeze, or, here in England, in Bentwaters, that I was involved with a lot of research here. Your good American people, Colonel Charles Holt, I'd met him, by the way. He's a lovely man. We had dinner with him. Had an experience in 1980 of the winter period here in England, at a military base here. And of course, they had a UFO activity over a 3-night period here as well. So it's not just it's in England, in America, and Canada as well. But what's interesting, Julie, is this, and just jumping a little bit here, looking at the statistics from MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, is that when they get these statistics about where most of the UFOs are seen, they're mostly seen in the United States of America, they're mostly seen in Canada and England. And when you get to the other countries like Africa and all those, they're very rarely seen. Now, that's interesting when we think about that, when we try and join the dots to see what's going on here. So, sure, Area 51 is and has been another one of the most famous areas of where people believe that there is alien technology and secretion of biological, creatures, aliens, they call them.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. My head's just going, okay, I've got about a million questions for you here. Do you think that it's seen over the US and Canada and the UK because we're looking for them more than people in other countries, and they're seeing them, but they're just not paying attention to them? Do you think that that's part of the whole equation here?
Well, a lot of them could be attributed to mistaken identity. However, as I said before, UFOs are real because I've had a few personal experiences up close and personal, and I'm very grounded, and they're quite shocking. And what I viewed stated to me categorically on numerous occasions that that technology is something we just don't seem to have, or maybe we do, but we haven't been told about it. I think consciousness has a lot to do with it. And this then opens up into areas of the mind, of how consciousness works. And of course, with my work, what happened was that I was involved in UFO research. And then, of course, I got involved with the psychic part, with consciousness, with the understanding of life after death. And I thought, my goodness, here's a guy who believes in UFOs, and now he's talking to the dead. I thought my reputation would get flushed right down the loo. But there are comparisons to be made, I think, in terms of this secrecy, of the way that this control of mental subjugation. And this isn't just something that's happened within our timeline. This is a phenomena that even goes further back than Roswell. But a lot of the generation that we're in and those that have just gone have been within that compartment of time where we've been able to hear about it or know about it, and less more about those cases that happened within the past. So when we're looking at the UFO phenomena, we're looking at something that is complex and tells us it's been here for a very long time. A telltale sign is the fact that, in the 1940s, these strange objects were known as ghost rockets, and then they became flying saucers, and now we have triangles. But even going further back, into the 18th century, they were seen as flying dirigibles. So, where's the joke here? I mean, what phenomena is orchestrating the presentation of these beings that seem to be a little bit ahead of us in terms of our own technology? And as we creep up to that point, perhaps gifted to us by certain intelligences, it's certainly something to consider that we are now being presented with the same phenomena, but operating on a far more complex level. It's almost as if the human is being pushed or directed into and away from this stagnatory period, as it were. So it's quite interesting, I think, looking at the past and where we are at the present. It's like trying to chase shadows. We can't catch them. The phenomena continuously elude us. So consciousness, I think, has a lot to do with it because the mind is omnipresent. I mean, it is there it's the creator of all. The unfortunate part is stabilizing that mind network. And you get some people who are too wide open and everything they see is there and they're dancing around with the fairies, or there are some people who are too narrow within their conscious approach and that they will block everything out. It's good to have a careful balance, but I think that perhaps because the United States of America and Canada and England, as well as some other large countries, are very open and aware to it, that this is allowing this phenomena to come in. So I think we're dealing with something that is very complex and can initiate through our human consciousness. I'll give an example very quickly. You'll get some cases where there's three people, and I know this personally, three people, and they UFOs come forward, three of them, massive objects, but only two of them can see them. Only two of those people can see them. The other person can't see them. Now that is bizarre, isn't it, Julie? That is really strange, isn't it?
So what do you attribute that to?
Well, whether or not the phenomena seems to focus individually upon the individual so that the person is singled out, and, maybe selected. I'm not saying the person's unique in any way. In one of the instances that we had, the last one on the 9th of April 2016 at precisely 11:15 p.m. at night, here where we are, there were the appearance of these three huge objects. But when they appeared, when we come back from some police friends for an early birthday meal I drove with my brother, when we arrived and they descended, they were huge in a triangular formation. They were separate but circular, but in a triangular formation. There was no sound. It was like it just snowed. There was no one coming down the road from the pub or walking their dog. I mean, it was a Saturday night. So this phenomena seems to warp or change our sense of reality. So I think in terms of that is able to coordinate and connect with an individual and then perhaps knock out other people. It's the same with abductions when you have a couple, a married couple, and the man is or the female is being abducted, but the male or the female know nothing about it. It's almost as if they knock them out. So we're dealing with some, disturbing parts to this. It's not all love and light at all, and I'm, very humorous person. I've got a wicked sense of humor. You've got to have that. But when you're looking into this, it is a phenomena that seems almost toy-like within its approach, that has this kind of like slight edge to it. So we're not sure. I mean, I, like you and many other people, are told by others what it is and that you're wrong. Okay, that's fine. But we have to be open to all forms of speculation. Trust me, I'm open to all of it, not just a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. I have a hypothesis I'd like to
Yeah,
throw
sure.
into the ring, and that is those that can see and experience these spacecraft, if you wanna call them that, or the abduction thing. I wanna get into that in a couple of minutes. Their vibration level is higher. They're able to perceive things in different realities more so than the person who isn't able to perceive them.
Absolutely.
We had Tom Palladino on this show, and we talked about plasma energy, plasma fields, plasma energy. I deal with that all the time in the healing work that I do. I know that the energy is going through a plasma field to affect the person with whom I'm working because I can connect into them almost instantly. And I'm like a human MRI and I can see inside their body, see body parts like hearts and livers and organs and jazz like that. And I when I had the late Tom, he passed away a few months ago, when I had him on the show, he said, "Well, you're using plasma energy to do that because plasma energy is different from our gravitational energy as we understand it in our reality with that." So when you're telling me stories about a couple people out of 3 can see these spacecraft, for lack of a better word, and one can't, their vibrational level is higher at that moment, maybe all the time, but at that moment. And that's what I teach. How do you raise your vibrational, not just to see UFOs, but to do all the other stuff. Furthermore, with the plasma energy thing, Tom mentioned that when the fighter pilots, whether it's an RAF fighter pilot or whether it's a Air Force or Navy fighter pilot over here, when they've seen these spacecraft, and it's like 1 second they're there, and the next second they're just disappearing, or they're flying like straight up, or in a way that there's no way that our technology that we currently have can keep up with it. He said they're using plasma energy to power those spacecraft to pull those maneuvers and all of that. And I went on to tell him when I am helping a client or a loved one go on to heaven when they're in their transition phase, we do this we call this the walk to heaven. It's like a dress rehearsal of what's gonna happen for people that are afraid, and I said, "Heaven to me seems like a plasma wall, Philip. I go through it, there's no trace, I can come back out of it, and it's just like this big plasma wall is the only thing I can think of to describe it." One last example too, one of my favorite movies is Contact with
Oh,
Jodie
yes.
Foster. When
Yes.
was that? In the late '80s, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah,
I love it.
and at the end, when she's on the other planet and she touches the air, it's plasma, and the spirit comes or the whoever the alien is, and he comes and he's dressed like her dad. Okay, spoiler alert, I'm ruining it for you, um, but that's what I see too, that it's a plasma field. So what is that? What's your explanation of all of that?
Well, first of all, Jodie Foster played a magnificent role in that film, and it's one of my favorites as well. I even have the soundtrack as well. It's kinda deep. Um, the connection to the plasma is interesting. I think looking at the human, and because we have gone through varied mutations or models, and through I believe another intelligence. Take away the chaos theory, and of course the evolutionary hypothesis. Maybe there's an amalgamation of two by something else, but we are energy, and we have a secondary body. They call it the etheric body, and we have the astral body, and we also have the astral planes, and energy is facilitated through the ether through to us. So I believe that you're absolutely correct. The more in tune you are, the more your vibrations lift up. And although as humans we can only see a little tiny bit of the infrared spectrum, as it were, but it is true that there is some kind of change. And this brings into the equation evolved souls. Now, if you'd asked me 10 years ago about, you know, souls coming from other star systems, I would have said, heck no, I don't believe that. But going back, we go through a process of transmutation. And what's interesting is that even the Egyptians were aware of the Orion star system, for goodness sake. We're going back even further. So they were aware of this knowledge. But I believe that we can access energy, and other energy fields can be attracted to us, whether positive or negative. And I believe that, there are good ETs and there are bad ETs, the same with human beings. I mean, we have that mixture here. So I believe plasma is interesting because I read a lot about that. And one of the books I read was through Robert Temple. He wrote a book um, called, and it was to do with the, oh my goodness, I've got so much in here, I can't remember it, but Robert Temple wrote this book about plasma and heaven. And it was interesting as well, seeing the plasma coming from the sun or through the sun, as it were. And this also brings into the equation the planetary systems, which are so important because people think, oh, astrology is a load of old rubbish. It's not. When you go into the deeper aspects of that, you find that there is energy connections within each planetary system. And the Sirius Mystery, that was it. The Sirius Mystery, Robert Temple wrote. I got it in there. So we are a composite of energy that can be raised or brought down. And I believe that those intelligences are drawn to your vibrational link. So absolutely, you are spot on, Julie, with regards to what you're saying there. And that's kind of made me go chilly because they're like, wow, you know, you know about that, and you've known about that for a long time. And it's like,
But I don't have any scientific background, so that means a lot to me. Thanks, professor. I
I mean,
appreciate.
we don't need any the thing is, though, this is the thing, you want titles after your name or before your name, it's fine. We are in here evolved, and we are going through a process of evolution on a spiritual level. And that is evident because we're seeing a lot of negativity on our world at the moment. We know what's going on. We know what they're trying to do. And this is, I believe, an ongoing drama, that the system that we serve, those human puppets that serve the masters, rather like the one on the Wizard of Oz, where you can't see him, he's hidden behind a curtain. There could be more of them. There's been, I believe, a war going on, a spiritual war, a silent war, and that we as like the avatars are coming in, perhaps even possible to try and bring that awareness to other people to say, hey, it's okay. We don't understand all of why we're here, but we know that there is a greater part of us that we need to get out of this. Do you understand? Because I always joke and say, Julia, that when I get to the other side, I'm going to get a refund. And I'll also say to them, what on earth underscore was that all about? I mean, you've got to have a sense of humor, you know? But that's interesting on a serious level with the extraterrestrial hypothesis and how they're drawn to certain individuals, what it is that they're after. And this is where a lot of my research was encompassed within the Greys, as they're called, as we know them at the moment as the Greys. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 points of what we were just talking about. Number 1, I remember reading that the ancient Egyptians, to whom you referred a couple of minutes ago, don't they have drawings in their caves and their
Oh,
pyramids
yes.
and stuff like that about star beings or starships or something?
Yes, that's right. I mean, the ancient Egyptians with their hieroglyphs, most notably the Pyramid of Cheops, or the Grand Pyramid, as it were. Robert Bauval and found with another author that there were connections to be made that these pyramids were actually a map to the stars, to the heavens, and that the pyramids themselves were the shafts in them, especially where the Queen's Chamber, the King's Chamber, were some kind of initiation sets so that the soul of the deceased would cross and go back to the Orion star system, as it were. And it's interesting how, with the Egyptians, that they were so advanced within their technology. And what made me laugh was that, the people of today are saying, no, 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 it's simple. We can make that. We can build. They couldn't. And there's so much ignorance and so much misinformation, even within the world of academia, because, even scientists have to follow official narrative. Otherwise, they'll lose their job. You can't blame them. And this official narrative has continued. It's the same with religion. I mean, religion's okay as long as it doesn't harm or control people, but the reality of that has been changed in order to misdirect the public and control thinking. So the Egyptians knew about these star systems. They knew about the afterlife. They knew about the continuation of the soul, although their version is very different to the way many other Eastern and Westerners see it. But it's interesting how they were you know, in the hands of wonderful technology. And people say, oh, the pyramids, they're just a bunch of stones. You go there and you see them and they are enormous. So they reckon they could have used some kind of sound therapy or sound vibration, because vibration, if it's attuned correctly, can move things, can change things. We know that through thought as well. So yes, I mean, as I said, the annoying thing is that the system that we serve, and especially the world of academia, it continues to promote this line that we started as an ape and haven't really progressed until now. And we could have progressed further back, and it's all been destroyed and sunk and dismantled, and we've had to start over again. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from with regards to the Egyptians and other ancient settlements all around the world, Aztec, and all the rest of it, with these magnificent buildings and astronomical centers as well. They knew about astronomy. Yeah, interesting.
Well, and aren't the pyramids all over the world? They're not just in Egypt.
That's
I
right.
mean, we've got pyramids here in America. You guys have pyramids in the UK and elsewhere. And from what I've read too, that a lot of these pyramids, if not all of them, and perhaps this is to what you were referring a minute ago, they seem to be synchronized with latitude and longitude and the way that they're positioned. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes, and I know it's interesting because, one of the, servicemen who was assigned to Rendlesham here in England in the 1980s, Jim Penniston, Sergeant, Jim Penniston, who was linked with Colonel Charles Holt. It's a controversial subject like Roswell, but he wrote a book all about his experience when he saw the craft and he touched the skin of the craft. And then, of course, he's had to deal with that most of his life. And his book's called The Rendlesham Enigma, Part One or Book One. And he wrote that with Gary Osborne. Now, what's interesting is that he suggests that the pyramids themselves are longitude and latitude and central to energy around the earth. And he believed that the object that came was from the future. He believed
Ooh.
that. Yeah, yeah, that is kind of spooky, isn't it? But we've got to look at all aspects. An ancient technology, or whatever's being downloaded, because he was downloaded with a load of binary numbers. And of course, years later, he got them analyzed, and they brought forth this message, which was quite revealing.
What was the message? You can't just drop that on us and then just not just keep going. What was the
Well,
message?
it's a very complex message to say, one, we're not alone, and two, that there are people from the future, and I kind of like, I'm okay with that, but you've got to put that on the back burner now and again, and that the pyramids seem to be central to a time where everything is coming together. So literally, the pyramid seem to be the central point for all of this distribution of energy and how important that they are as a powerhouse for this energy, and and that all the other areas around the world, especially here in England, with the Tor, in Glastonbury Tor being a connection. So all of this ancient ley lines and energy centers seem to interconnect with the main pyramid. And this is interesting how they saw the pyramids as not just burial chambers, but ceremonial chambers where there were ceremonies carried out. And people have to understand there is a science also within, incantations, with spells, with words, with thought that can change things. And they even believe that Christ also connected with his teachings in the pyramids, this initiation chamber. Although, as I said before, a lot of history has been changed to divert our attention away from not just Christ, but also Mary Magdalene, who was an important part of that schooling. And of course, the Romans and many others tried to scrub her out of history. And this goes back to the creation mythos. So what we're seeing here is incredible, because the Egyptians were in possession of incredible knowledge, and which has been scattered and which has been hidden, some of which I think has been unearthed. Well, I don't think, I know. The Gnostic texts, the Nag Hammadi text as well too, that was found within Hammadi and hidden in jars. So Egypt's got a lot of history, not just because of the pyramids, but because of a lot of what went on there. And it's possible that they had these UFOs, that they were known as flying crafts. Vihahamas, I can never pronounce the name of them, but there was also the Indian crafts as well too that was seen flying. The Ark of the Covenant as well too, was an ancient artifact that carried great power. And of course, the Holy Grail, the cup itself that led us to believe it was for immortality. So when you get involved with ufology, you find that this takes you into and down the rabbit hole into ancient history and into other areas of the soul. But think of this, the Egyptians were also very much aware of the afterlife. In fact, they lived in the knowledge that that is what they were preparing for, the great beyond. So they carried knowledge that we would see as extraterrestrial, but also had a great understanding of the afterlife, as it were. So yeah, we're doing some catching up, I think.
Well, and the pyramids too, it's my understanding, especially with regard to the Bosnian pyramids, and I have to think all of them, they're really energy generators as
Yes.
I look at them, because there are many people that have gone in those pyramids, and a lot of them have water flowing through them. And they go in and they've got cancer or they've got high blood pressure or diabetes or something, and they're in there for a couple of hours and they come out and those illnesses are cured. And so what I teach for people who are learning healing is we bring energy from the core of the earth up, which is scalar energy, which is plasma energy, which is what we're using when we're doing the healing and connecting with others. Quick fun story, early on when I was doing my show, I think we just recorded show 572 or something last night, And I think this is episode 31, Philip. I had a guy call me and he said, "Can you do a past life scan on me?" I don't do hypnotism stuff with past life. I do this scan thing where I'm shown the past life that correlates where it was, when it was. We get information. A lot of times we can corroborate it with historic documentation online, which is really fun when that happens. But, anyways, this guy calls and he said, "I'm an engineer and I'd love to find out if I was an engineer in a past life." So I'm doing my past life scan and I get this vision. My head's like a big screen TV, and I get this vision of a Star Wars set. Looks like a Star Wars set to me, where there are buildings and there's flying cars like the Jetsons, kind of not necessarily looking like that, but the concept, of the Jetsons, the
Ah,
cartoon
yes.
back when I was a kid, and all of that. And I said to him, I said, "Oh, well, this must be God, this must be in the future because it's on a different planet." And then I asked what the year was, and it was 1931. And I thought, okay. My first thought was, this is George Lucas channeling all this stuff from these other galaxies. And this guy in that lifetime was a man, we got his name, and he was in charge of the electrical grid that powered this settlement. It looked like tall office buildings that were illuminated, and there were a lot of cars that were flying around. And they didn't look like flying saucers, they looked more like a Jetsons car, really. So I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "This is a past life for you in a different galaxy on a different planet." And I don't remember what the galaxy system was because I'm not that familiar with that stuff. Anyways, so I said to him, "What kind of engineer are you?" And he said, "I'm an electrical engineer." And he said,
Wow.
"I build jet engines for GE
Wow.
here in Connecticut." And I thought, okay. And I'll see a semblance of a past life script that will repeat through multiple lifetimes. And that's the first time I really saw something that was on in a different planet. And I've seen it many times since for different clients and even for myself. And I thought, okay, this is real because there's too much information that I can get that we can corroborate with research that's been done by you and by your colleagues. And I always think of George Lucas thinking, "This guy channeled all this stuff." I don't know that he channeled Jabba the Hutt and those guys, but he, like J.K. Rowling, right, has an amazing imagination.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you about Star Wars. I mean, I was, I think, roughly around 7 or 8 when I saw it. And one of the things that shocked me was the first part when Princess Leia's craft is being attacked by a Star Destroyer and C-3PO and R2-D2 are being seen. Now, it's strange because when I looked at the set on the film as a kid, there was some kind of flashback. And when I saw Tatooine as well, the world of Tatooine, it brought some kind of memory. So what I think happens, I no doubt that George Lucas has channeled that, that
Oh,
he's
yeah, me
brought.
too.
Oh, absolutely, and you and I and many other people feel that because he's got a vested interest apparently in the afterlife. Because if you look at Darth Vader, he looks like a samurai warrior. The swords were the lightsabers. Now, what I believe happens, and I've had this as well too, on a psychic level, is that sometimes you could be doing something and then that something, not random, it can trigger a memory that can seep through and then you can see it and then it seems to dissipate very quickly. But when it comes in, you're left with this feeling of joy, of incredible universal oneness, that there's so much more, an expansion of you. And this, I believe, as you are very much aware, is the accumulation of memories, perhaps within the etheric field or the plasma field, as the want of the better word, and that through our normal, central, and conditioned programming and conscious recording, sometimes one of those memories will slip through and then kind of like throw you a little bit and then bring you back into your normal reality for a moment. So, I mean, I have seen the other side on 2 occasions. And heck, it could have been another world for all I knew, but I knew it. It was home. So when we talk of the afterlife, when we talk of heaven, people assume that we're going to one stop. I say, perhaps like Heathrow Airport here in England, they're all rocking up there, but it may not be the case. It could be that we're diverging and splitting to those areas that we originated from originally, and that's home. So I love the Star Wars films, the Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. They're very romantic. But George Lucas, goodness, he's affected so many people with it through his vision. And I believe that we're all part of this, that there are worlds within worlds. So I agree absolutely that sometimes there's something that can trigger, and dealing with past memory, especially life between lives, within that connection of life between lives, and then of course like afterlife research, you're discovering and finding that even then, not just being healed in ancient buildings where water and the whole atmosphere, and I've heard of cases of that, absolutely, you're totally right there, completely, of being healed, um, is the other area of when someone is taken back to a past life, but then finding themselves in another life. And then when they deal with that trauma, and by recognizing it within this life, Edgar Casey, of course, the American prophet, sleeping prophet, did most of that. When they've acknowledged it, they seem to be healed in this life. And that's interesting. And I just got to point this out to you. In near death research, when someone has died and they've crossed over, they go to a timeless, spaceless domain. They communicate with their loved ones through telepathy or exalted beings. And if their body that's left behind temporarily is diseased, on their return back from this timeless, spaceless domain, normally there's a correction within the material body, and they're changed. It's almost as if there's been an increase within your plasma that has healed the body. Now, in looking at this, is what also infuses the abduction phenomena without getting too complex, but how they're able to, and I've theoretically assumed this back in 1996, they're able to extract real part of you from your physical embodiment and bring you into their vibrational energy. But because the spiritual body, for want of a better word, the etheric body, the astral body is still connected to its physical counterpart. Any changes that's made there will ultimately affect the physical counterpart that's here on the return. So we're looking perhaps within the field of ufology of beings that are not so on our material level, but are able to mimic that to a degree in order to get through to our system of reality. The same perhaps with angels or spirit guides. Indeed, even the nightmarish creatures that we have here, the Sasquatch or the Dogman, that seem to come in on those levels and then go out as though they were nothing less than ghosts, but had physical manifestation when they appeared into our reality. So I think that it works on one level and then the other. So, but certainly on the love and light and the good aspect, which we're all for, absolutely, with the healing, it's fascinating. I think through an awareness of the mind and then getting into the accessing the past, the individual's past, and what's really affected them, and how you can heal them by bringing them back and bringing this to surface memory, and of course dealing with that in this life, in a trauma that they couldn't in a past life.
Yeah.
It's
I
amazing.
had I had Simon Bown, who's a countryman of yours. He's a Brit on the show. I've had him on a couple of times, but last summer we had him on and he did do you know Simon?
I think he does his
Been
show,
on
does
his
he
show.
do
He
shows,
does.
doesn't he? Yeah, I've been on there,
He
yeah.
does. Yeah, I've been on there a couple times too. And great guy. And he's a hypnotist and he does past life regression stuff. I'd never been hypnotized before, Philip. So I completely trusted him. I said, "Can you do it? And let's do it and record it and release it as a show." I don't remember what the number is. It was last summer. So, anyways, my question was, where did my interest in healing and my abilities that I've developed, but where did they originate? And I thought he'd show me like being a doctor someplace in the Amazon, maybe sort of mercy ships or something. I don't know. But what we came up with was it was 500 billion light years away on a star. I was, and it's I'll send you the link for the show. We'll put it in the show notes for those of you that are listening and watching. It was all this energy that was coming into me, and I describe it on the show. when he had hypnotized me and I was watching all this stuff, all of these energy healing frequencies and vortices and all this other jazz. And I was thinking, Seriously? A star? It wasn't even a planet, it was a star, but it was 500 billion light years away. I don't know that much about all that stuff to make that up, and I promise you I'm not that creative. So, I thought that was really wild, and then after we finished recording, we got off, the show, and Chris, my producer, and Simon and I were talking, we were like, "Holy Moses, that was crazy." But there was so much information that came in, and I think we haven't even scratched a speck of what's really going on out there.
No, I agree with you because, energy is, as we know, I've just finished a new book with another co-author, a good friend of mine, Chris John Mays, called The Eternal Avatar, that's coming out in July of next year. And it talks about the process of incarnation, reincarnation, looking at the deep aspects of the soul, the spirit. And of course, Thoth, if we take Thoth within ancient antiquity, within Egyptology, he was formed by not coming into an incarnation. He wasn't born, he came from light. And as we understand now, people in the past said, oh, what a load of old rubbish. But hang on a minute, scientists are discovering that life can be created through light because light is vibration. And so when you're talking about that, remember also that we are eternal. We don't know what eternal means in our current human form because we're met by a timeline that we exist by, and that we think that's it. There is so much more. You and I know that, and my family knows it, and many other people know this. It's interesting how we can't have full access to those memories, and this is another thing that I've got to laugh about. Many mediums say to me, "Oh, you plan your life on the other side before you come in," and I thought, really? Well, I mean, for an experience, and there are several epoch, dare I mention them terrible times that people would incarnate in. I'm thinking, why would they come through in those times then? And why do we forget? Why do we forget if we had memory of what we had done in a past life or a previous existence somewhere else? Surely we would have the tools at our disposal to know that we're not going to muck up next time round and we can make a better go of it. But we don't. And it feels like we're in this cycle. So going back to that question about this war, I believe that something on earth, not the good, because the good of what you're doing and many other people are trying to wake people up and make them remember who and what they are. But the system is forgetting, um, making us forget who and what we are. And this is the problem because I believe that through the process of incarnation and reincarnation, which are absolutely set, is very fascinating. But why we forget, and it's not because we won't be able to handle it neurologically. Heck, we have a second body that deals and has all that information there that you go in, Julie, with the plasma body. But we have to force our way through. So we're finding that we're almost like sleeping within this life. And not you and I and many others, we are awakening to this process, and which is fascinating. But many other good souls out there, God love them, can't see that. So I think something's happened on this planet Earth, Gaia itself, and it wasn't meant to happen. So have we been hijacked by a darker force? Well, it certainly seems so because it's all to do with the darkness and the light and this war with good and bad. George Lucas's story is quite plain in its symmetry of that within its development. So, yeah, I agree with you. I believe that, energy and is information, rather like the signals going into a mobile phone network system. We can't see them. We don't know they're there, but we know that it's there until it hits the translator, which is the phone like, and of course, then we can make sense of what's coming through. But then, of course, you get influxed with more information and bypassing that information from the normal processing of where it's coming from the system that we're evolved from. So this information that we're getting is from perhaps those on the other side, other dimensions of reality, beyond space and time, beyond our level of reality. So it wouldn't surprise me when you talk about a light and vibration. That is very interesting because I've heard that before from not about being a star, a planet, or connected there, but certainly with the energy and vibrations and how this seems to create. So yeah, I understand that.
Well, the other thing is quantum physicists have discovered and written papers about that the nucleus of the human cell is a black hole. And black holes are source to me. I see lots of black holes when people are transitioning to the spirit world into heaven and other areas. And I find that fascinating. So I think that I concur with what you're talking about with light is just energy
That's
and it's
correct.
just
Vibration.
creation. I mean, certainly if inside the nucleus of a human cell is a black hole, what all does that leave us open to? I
Yes.
It's infinite possibilities, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah. Within the
Yeah.
quantum realm, they're finding that as they go deeper into the subatomic level of reality, the further they go down, there is space and it seems to match what's out there. So people say to me, I don't believe in UFOs and I don't believe in life after death. And okay, that's fine. I said, well, what's out there? They said, the sky. No, beyond that, space. And I say to them, okay, what is space? And they're like, "Space." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. Hang on. What is space? What are we in? What's holding it together? Either there is or there isn't." Both of those questions are fascinating within the extreme. So you can see that I'm not here to blow your head off tonight, Julie. I hope
No,
you
I
won't.
love this
Um,
conversation. Are you kidding? I've been
yeah,
waiting for this for a long time. You and I have been trying to get together to do this for a
yeah.
long time.
We're all important, every one of us. I don't care if you're the man with the can or the king with the crown. We have a bunch of theories, but it's always fascinated me about our origins, about the bigger picture. And I thought, well, hell, I must be a freak, but I'm glad that I'm not because there's many other people out there that I can connect with and who have been of service and of great help and inspiration and, mentors to me because we all help one another try and understand. Okay, we don't always agree with everything, but certainly within the quantum realm, in the subatomic realm, you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's like they just lose it because it's like, oh my God, there's like another world in there. And I believe it's not a case of going out. I think it may be a case of going within. And certainly within the reports of incarnation, well, there is one. My friend who's helped me co-author the book remembers his incarnation experience, and he said how everything was a lot bigger when he was coming in than from the realm from where he had originated from before he came here. So that is fascinating.
Well, I think too, people who say, "Well, I don't believe that." You what I usually don't say it because I'm kinder than this, but I think just because you don't believe it doesn't mean it isn't true, I
Absolutely.
mean,
Yeah.
that's the case with everything. So there's that. I wanna bring it back into present day for a minute, and then I wanna talk about the abductions and a couple of other things before we wind this down. First of all, as we're recording this, there are UFOs or drones or something over the state of New Jersey here in the US. What do you think's going on with that?
I have got no idea, Julie. All I can tell you is that it seems very strange and odd that our military services have not found out who they belong to, what they belong to. And also the question, I don't think that the public are being fed entirely all of the information. For one, drones can only stay up in the air for a maximum of about 20 minutes to 40 minutes. I think there was some rumor here that they were coming out of the ocean. It's just very bizarre because, it's very strange. So, most people will jump on the bandwagon and say there's going to be a UFO invasion, or could this be a ploy by one country to the other, trying to stir things up on a level that encompasses the military, but also politics. We don't know. But the phenomena is very strange. But this happens every single time. We will never be able to have transparency ever. It's the same with ufology. We won't have that transparency because we have to rely on other sources. Many people are very honest and truthful, but when it comes forward, it then gets added with more information on it and more hearsay and more rumor. So, if we were there and we could see it and analyze it, we'd be able to say, hey, that's a UFO, or hey, that's one of the another country's, but they keep it all quiet. I understand that from the military perspective. I really do, because we have to be, careful about protecting our boundaries, but it just seems very strange that they've been seeing all over the world. It's the same with the crop circles. I mean, apparently here in England, two men were responsible for them called Doug and Dave. I mean, are you telling me that Doug and Dave traveled to America, traveled to all these other countries around the world just to make these crop circles? No. No. So you can see what's going on. We don't know. It's interesting. So we're just sitting back and watching, just sometimes to sit back and see, get your popcorn out and I don't know. It's very, very odd and strange.
Do you think do you think people have reason to be worried about it? Do you think it's dangerous?
Um, I believe not. I believe that if this was due to some form of extraterrestrial intervention, they could have taken us over, decades ago. They could have changed everything. They no. I would like to think that they're coming forward, these extraterrestrials, if I can use that word lightly, to kick ass, to say, you know what, you work Earth, we're going to show you that our might is bigger than your might, and that a lot of what you're doing is wrong, and we need to dismantle all of that because you're doing it all backwards. So that's my dream of seeing it. I'm like, yeah, let ET come and kick ass. Let's hope it's not the other way round. That we've got the badass ETs coming in. It's like,
Like Independence Day. Wasn't
yes.
that the Will Smith movie?
Oh my God,
Yeah.
it's when on the top of that building and they're all having a great time. I wouldn't even be on it, but that makes me laugh. Yeah, lovely.
Well, and I have to believe too that if it was posing some sort of danger to those in New Jersey, that they would have been shot down already. I mean, they're not our military is not gonna allow something like that to be going on. The thing that's the most fascinating to me is why so much secrecy around it? What's the deal on that?
Roswell all
Yeah.
over again. It's like
Yeah,
many other
Roswell,
things.
right, right, and Roswell's New Mexico, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Wright Pat Air Force Base, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is in Dayton, Ohio.
That's right.
And then Area 51's in Nevada, so those are 3 very different areas, but New Mexico sees a lot of sightings supposedly of UFO. Why is that? Is it because of the energy and the vortices that are in that area, do you believe?
Yes, it could possibly be. I mean, when human consciousness has been, in basically on our world geographical map, these areas of high strangeness seem to be in deserted locations, like your national forests, for instance, with a lot of the strange phenomena that goes on there. You know, Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, and here in England, Stonehenge, all that type of thing. So I believe that with human consciousness, they could actually create gateways or openings for these interdimensional beings or energies to come through. And it's possible that in that sacred site, when someone walks into that or goes into that, they activate it, or there's some kind of activation depending on the connection with the human or how they're attuned to that vibrational energy. So it's very interesting. But I agree with you. It's very strange, weird. These hotspots or these portals or openings, and hopefully, it would love to that day when they come forward and say, "Right, we're here. We're going to tell you how to do it the right way and not the wrong way." That would be wonderful. That would be lovely.
Back to the is it
Yes. Yeah.
Rendlesham
Rendlesham, yeah.
Forest incident? Please tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, in December of 1980, over a 3-night period, and it had covered the Christmas night period. Um, uh, the crew, the Americans who were stationed at Bentwaters, there's Woodbridge as well too, because part British and part the Americans were with the
So it's a
Bentwaters.
base? Is it an
Yes,
Air Force
that's right, and
base?
a huge Air Force base, and it's within a huge area of forest. And of course, there was a call to come out. They thought, first of all, that a plane had crashed in the forest because there were some strange lights coming from the forest. And of course, as is due to military jurisdiction, the American troops cannot take their weapons out of base. So 2 officers went out, well, 3 actually, but Peniston and Jim Peniston and John Burroughs went out, and they actually had an interaction with a strange pyramidical type craft that was about not very big, probably about twice the size of a car in length, and slightly hovering off the ground. And uh, Jim Peniston had touched the object, and then he was downloaded with all this information. The phenomena seems to affect not just Jim Peniston, but also John Burroughs, because they reported different things. And you'll find this phenomena comes in not just as like singular level. It comes in multiple levels of alternative realities. So they went back and they reported this to the deputy base commander, Colonel Charles Holt, who was then Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt. Um, and he then, had the troops have a look, and he went out with his men a few nights later because the UFOs kept coming back. And of course, they had this experience where this UFO split into three stars and started to send beams down onto the ground. And then, of course, one of the UFOs was shining beams down on their weapons storage unit. And of course, that was all top secret. No one knew about that. So over the 3 nights, this occurred, and then, of course, they then covered the whole thing and wanted it shut down, nothing spoken about it. The Office of Special Investigations came in, and they spoke to all those. It wasn't just Peniston and Burroughs and a few others. It was quite a lot of men that were out there with Colonel Charles Holt when the main event of the episode occurred. And then, of course, you have a lot of people saying, "Oh, it was they were mistaking it for a satellite that was breaking up, or it had something to do with the Russians." These are fully trained American men and women as well. And what they're reporting is what they're trained to report. One person said, "Oh, what they were seeing was the lights from the then Orford Nest Lighthouse." Well, we were doing our research then, and let me tell you, it was not that. And God help our people if our servicemen and women are chasing the lights to a lighthouse. I mean, that's a ridiculous notion. So that was a very famous. It's like they call it England's Roswell, as it were.
Mhm. Yeah, I've read a little bit about it. It's fascinating. Okay, let's talk for a minute about these abductions. What's going on with that? Are they taking DNA from humans? Are they putting DNA into humans? What's your research shown?
Well, my research, yeah, my research has shown that we're dealing perhaps with some kind of interdimensional entity. They are interested in us as humans because they appear to be prosaic in nature. They're like clones. My thesis that I had published back in 1996 suggested perhaps that these certain faction of greys have counseled themselves out of recreation. I mean, we
What's a
are
gray?
a
What's a
grey
gray?
alien, yeah, a grey alien is a 3-foot being. They're very famous within, science fiction. They've got large black eyes. They're bold. They're thin, diminutive in nature. Have a slit for a mouth, 2 dots for a nose, and they seem kind of creepy. They're called greys because they appear grey in nature, and they are very famous within UFO, history, especially with Roswell, because they were kind of like. Um, Seen then by a lot of the witnesses that were reported to look like that. So they've been known as the Greys, as it were. We don't know what they are, where they come from, but it's interesting why why they seem to be connected with the abduction phenomena and taking humans, and then trying to wipe their memory clean of the event while it's happening. But my argument is that if they are clones, themselves clones, they cannot reproduce. And we are, as a human species, we are a reproductive species. We come in through the womb, the channel, and we have memories and we return back to source. But if we clone ourselves, my argument is that we possibly would counsel ourselves out of that process of creation. So they're interested in reproduction, hybridization. Why? For a species that themselves cannot reproduce. Why is that? So it must have something to do with not just DNA or what makes us tick, but the very essence of what makes us operate, work, which is the soul or spirit. And I believe that it's possible that they're infusing a part them, part us into this hybrid to try and recreate or replicate this process of reproduction, as it were, to do with the soul. That was my thesis back in 1996. It's a little bit heavy, um, but it suggests that whether or not these greys are astral in nature. And people say, well, if they're astral, how can they create reality? Well, light is vibration, and it creates matter, as we understand. So they probably have come from the astral or lower dimensions of reality and then connected with us here and made and draw us away from our real essence, the body, through an abduction. That's why people go through walls and doors. They're taking the real part of you into their domain where there is a connection. Rather like those who cross over and die, they interact with their loved ones because they're removed temporarily from the physical dimension and matched by that level of those on the other side, rather like If you're connected with a mobile phone network system, if you're a signal, you'll be able to see all the other signals and what's being held in them. It's kind of like
Interesting
heavy.
analogy.
Yeah,
I've never thought of that before, Philip. That's really insightful with
yeah,
how people, because they are, not only are they connected with their loved ones' spirits when they get to heaven, but those loved ones' spirits are in the room with them when they're transitioning, when
that's
they're in the
correct.
dying process, and university-based research says that 90% of people see the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets at the end of their lives.
That's right.
90%.
Mhm.
So, that's an interesting point. I hadn't put that together yet.
Or they
Huh.
could be creating a new genus because we've screwed up here on Earth, and that they're creating a new. This is another theory that they're creating a new genus that they want off-world, that they know that this is finished, and that they wanted to. They could perhaps be engineers. We don't know. We're not labeling them as bad. They could be engineers and wanted to infuse a new human, a new part human alien to exist somewhere else and start creation again in the Garden of Eden somewhere else, because the human has worked out to be a species that has gone downhill. And let's put it that way.
As a fun aside, a buddy of mine was the costume designer for E.T.
Oh wow! I
And
love ET.
when I first met him, his name's Dan, and when I first met him, I said, "Oh my god, you dressed E.T. in that crazy outfit with the hat and the beads and everything?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "E.T. was a puppet." But I said, "Did you get divine downloads from aliens on how to dress E.T.?" And he said, "Well, I don't really remember that happening, but yeah, it's kind of he has great stories about, working on E.T.
I love the
and
film.
all of that. Oh, yeah,
As
yeah,
a
and
kid.
it's and what is it? Third encounters or what is it? Strange
Close
encounters
Encounters of
of
the Third Kind.
third kind or something along those lines. Well, yeah, and I don't get that these aliens are to be feared because what I've been told a bazillion time from spirit is that all spirit is pure love, whether they're human, whether they're alien, whether they're whatever. It's all pure love and there's nothing to be afraid of. But certainly we humans fear what we don't understand.
That's right.
So we immediately go into fight or flight and we lose clarity because the frontal lobe of the brain just goes dark when we're in fight or flight and people just start dreaming up all this crazy stuff. But I don't get that that it makes sense to fear them. All right, I could talk to you for another 5 hours. But in the meantime, we'll have you back. In the meantime, why do we incarnate? Last question. Why do we incarnate?
It's possible, although I don't know, but I've thought about that. Is it possible that we are creating memories? We're creating a reality that we then really live on on the other side of life, rather like producing a film and creating a film, and then of course people watch it, they live it. It's like wow, and you can go back and rewind and play it again and again and again. So I believe it's possible that as humans, that our journey is through creation because we have memories because the future is in a field of potentiality, comes into us in this particle, and then ends up going into a wave of memory. And everything is in memory. We go back in memory. We think about our loved ones, all those special times, and we can't reach it. We can never reach it. When we pass over, we live in that timeless, spaceless domain where it all is all there. So I believe that we are creating worlds within worlds because if we didn't have this process of creation, there'd be no film to watch. That I always see it that way. Shakespeare said that life is like a stage, or around about that way. And I believe that we're participants in that, in the creation of all that is. And it is a beautiful feeling. I just don't like the hurt or the pain or the tears, that's too much for me. I think as a species, human species, I just want everyone to be happy and looked after, but we don't have that capacity to do that. But I believe it's possible that we're creating memories, that we're creating upon the rich tapestry of life, and we're all part of that, every one of us. And it is a beautiful journey when it's all going right.
There you go. What a fascinating, brilliant guy you are. Thank you for all the research that you're doing. Thank you for bringing all of this to the forefront for those who are interested in it. And it's changing the zeitgeist of, I think, of humanity. with the work that you and your colleagues are doing to make us really think beyond our limited reality
Oh, yes.
into what if, and if it is true, if it is certainly feasible, if it's true, how does it really benefiting us and how are we in turn benefiting them?
Well, I can tell you it gives you a richness to know that there is hope beyond this material level of reality. That hope is what we cling on to because we know there is so much more. Memories, they are so important. People, events, things, beautiful things, they can't be scattered to the wind. And these phenomena come in to remind us that no, you're not alone, that there is much more to this. And I love what you said about Jodie Foster in the film Contact. I love that when at the end, when she was stunned, she couldn't explain it, and that is exactly what happens to you because you cannot find the words. You're just trying to deal with it and translate it, and it is beautiful.
And what did she do? She went through a black hole
Yes,
and the
yeah,
tape stopped
yes.
for
15
17
hours.
minutes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A
right?
long time, yeah.
A long time, and then that comes out, and so there's so much rich information in there. It
Yes,
I
beautiful.
someday I'm gonna look up and see who the screenwriter was
I know
of
Carl
that
Sagan
show,
wrote the book. Carl Sagan wrote the book. Yeah, yeah, but
right?
I don't know who the screen
That's
writer
true.
was.
I forgot
Yeah,
about that. Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
So, he was so brilliant too, don't
yes.
you know? And he's communicating. He's probably putting all kinds of information into your head, your
I
colleague's head.
don't know about that. He'll probably
He's got
disagree with a lot of what I think about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, how can people learn more about you and your work?
Yes, I mean, my books are available on Amazon. I mean, long ago, years ago, I was published by publishers before Amazon, but now you can get them on Amazon. And you can find me, and I have an identical twin brother at www.thekinsellatwins.com or www.philipkinsella.com. And that's how you can reach me. But I've really enjoyed being on your show, Julie. It's been amazing and fascinating, and it's great. It's great to chill, and it's like being in a coffee room and just having a chat and just throwing things to one another, and it's wonderful.
I'm gonna take you out to dinner next time I'm in town, and it'll probably last 5 hours because 'cause we'll be going, blah, back
Yeah.
and forth, going back and forth. Okay, everybody, lots for you to think about. In the meantime, we're sending you lots of love from Sweet Home Alabama, mwah, and from the UK too, where Philip is. We'll see you next time. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.